Yeah, I'm going to cry. Sorry. Call your sponsors. My name is Jennifer Huddleston Kelly, and I am an alcoholic. I've been kept sober since December 5th of 92, and that's my miracle. And the Legacy group in Plano, Texas is my home group. And it is an honor and a privilege to get to be here. I did not want to be the Sunday morning speaker. I'm just saying, now I love how many people are here. That's unheard of. I mean, you are the people who took the cigarette butts out of the drink to clean up after the party. I am convinced. You are my people. I didn't miss a minute of the party. As a matter of fact, I kind of forgot that some of those after parties were about people hooking up because there was a keg there. And everybody would go off in 2 by 2, like on. And I would still be there in the morning on the couch drinking. And guys would come out of their bedroom going, "You're still here." And I would say, "There's still beer." I always, at any of these things, I always thank the committee. You did an amazing job. I always say that because that's how you're raised. But really, don't tell anybody at the other ones, but you guys really nailed it. You really did. This has been an amazing weekend, and I needed it. I felt like I sat in God's lap all weekend. I want to thank all the other speakers. Gee, thanks. I literally went to my room to compose a new talk last night. I threw it away this morning, but I swear if you go to room 385 in the trash can, there are notes going, oh. It's been prime rib recovery all weekend, and now I'm going to throw Skittles at ya. Super. I am not the heavy hitter here, but I am completely grateful that I got to be here because I heard the things I needed to hear. And I got my little golden puzzle piece to take back when I go home. And I love these. I just love them. I have loved conferences since my very first one. And I don't know why I feel compelled to tell you about my very first one because I usually don't, but I got to tell you about my very first one. I was 6 months sober on the day that I went to my first conference. My grandfather died on that day, and he was one of my biggest resentments, and I did not think that I would stay sober. My family was tremendously broken because of me. And I didn't do funerals, and I didn't do my grandmother, and I didn't do a lot of the things that were standing in front of me. And when I found out that my grandfather had died, I told my parents I wouldn't go to the conference. And for some reason, my dad, who was not thrilled that I had joined Alcoholics Anonymous, said, "Why don't you go be with your people this weekend and you can come back and do what you've got to do?" And he sort of intuitively knew that I needed to be amongst you. And I went to this conference where I knew one person, the girl who rode in the car with me. I went because some guy, cute guy, told me to go. And he didn't even go, but he told me I needed to go. And I drove to this canyon in Oklahoma, and the Saturday night speaker there was a lady named Peggy M. And she talks like I think. She's just boing, 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 and I could follow every bounce. And the whole time that she talked, my brain was fighting with itself, as it does, and half my brain was going, "Oh my gosh, that's you, that's you." And this other half of my brain was going, "Oh, that's just your ego because you think she's really cool." Because she was, I had gotten sober at 26 and she was 26 when she got sober. And the weekend that I heard that talk, she was 26 years sober. And I knew that somebody like me, who thought like me and felt like me, could stay sober. I didn't know if I could, but I knew that somebody who thought like me and who drank like me could. And then I listened to what she was doing, and I was doing the things that she was doing at that time, and I knew it was possible. I just knew it was possible, and then I kept talking myself out of it. And the girl who had come with me elbowed me, and she goes, "Oh my God, that's you!" And And it was confirmed. And I was so intimidated by that lady that I couldn't thank her after. I just sort of stalked her. I was always about 4 feet away from her the whole weekend, trying to get the maracas to go up and thank her for telling my story. And I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. It would get right here and I'd start to cry. And I thought that she's going to think I'm a freak because I wasn't quite on board with AA. Everybody cries. Are you kidding me? Sooner or later, and if I didn't hope I didn't surprise anybody, but you're going to weep. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but there will be weepage. But I felt so guilty that I hadn't thanked this woman who had been so important to me, that I had gone up to the top of the canyon that night and I screamed at the stars and I said, I don't know who you are and I don't know where you are, but I believe that you are and I need you now. And I've not had a drink since. And so I felt so guilty that I hadn't talked to this lady that we were reading the back of the grapevine, and I found out about this thing called the Gopher State. Cornhusker in Flippin', Nebraska. And we drove from Dallas to Flippin', Nebraska. Kansas is the green part of hell, is all I'm saying. And on and on and on. And we literally drove to this conference so I could walk up to this lady and say, you made a big difference in my life. And she kind of looked at me like I was a kook, but great events will come to pass, and I was sitting at the table last night amongst these people. I'm completely starstruck because I'm an AA junkie. I mean, I've got the CDs and I'm like, and they're talking to me like we're peers. And they don't even know, I just feel like I've totally snuck into this thing. Because I'm unique and I'm different and I'm less than and apart from until I sit amongst you. And I discover we all suffer from this same illness and we have this amazing solution. And what a gift to get to be an Alcoholics Anonymous. And I never, ever thought I would say that. I was born at a very early age on November 16th of 1966. I was born to a football coach and an English teacher, and they are so straight, it is scary. My dad has never, he had one drink. It was in a hospital, and it was prescribed by a doctor. Seriously. And I asked him why he didn't drink, and he said, honey, if I ever liked drinking as much as I liked food, I'd be in real trouble. And there came a time when I liked drinking way more than I liked food, and I like food. My mother used to have 2 glasses of wine once every 3 years, whether she needed it or not. And then right around the time she turned 50, she admitted she really didn't like wine and quit. It was that peer pressure. And my mom and dad, they are not like most of us. My mom and dad, they met and they dated and they got married and they had sex in that order. And they did everything that they did on purpose. They had kids on purpose. They went to work. They went to church. They did the right thing even when nobody was looking. Just a few years ago, my mother discovered that there was an error in their taxes, and she just sent the IRS a check. She didn't make them catch her. I mean, I argued with her for an hour on this, because that's just not how her brain works. And I was loved and I was wanted and I was given absolutely everything that I would ever need to be happy and healthy and well-adjusted. Oops. And the reason I know that is that I was happy and healthy and well-adjusted for almost 3 years. We have pictures. And then they brought home another bouncing baby girl and she ruined everything. I blamed her for the next 30 years for every decision I made. I recognize that this is Alcoholics Anonymous and I respect the traditions, but my first drug of choice was attention. And homegirl started interfering with my attention, and I thought she had to go. And every now and then I still try to get them to send her away. But she ruined my opportunity to blame this on anything that had to do with my family, because we went to the same church, the same schools, we were potty trained in generally the same way. She went to high school and graduated. She went to college and graduated in 4 years. I am 46 and I'm a sophomore. This is the only thing I've ever paced myself at. I think college algebra 1. We've been competing for the last 2 decades, and I've signed up. But anyway, after she graduated from college, she chose a career. She went to go work for Jesus in Bulgaria. My sister was the missionary. I was a cocktail waitress in a pool hall. You are my people. At the church, they clap at the different part. We were both doing God's work in our own way. And while she was in Bulgaria, she met a Bulgarian man. They dated, they got married, and they had sex in that order. I got married 3.5 years ago for the first time. I was not a virgin. And my younger sister just does stuff different. She just does stuff different because she watched my parents. My parents didn't just tell us how to live. They showed us how to live. They absolutely showed us how to live. And every Wednesday night, my dad is at a retirement home taking Bible studies and church services to the people who are there. And my dad is obese, blind, and has Alzheimer's. And he's still doing service work. My sister, right up until she had my second niece, worked for Habitat for Humanity. Not because she has a sponsor that says she'll die if she doesn't do service work. She just does that kind of crap. She worked for the daycare at her church. And it's so funny because my AA friends meet her and they go, "No, she's really nice." I'm like, that's the point. She makes lifelong friends in the grocery store. I've known some of you for years, and I'm working up to a 5-minute conversation. Because apparently, she's not up in her head all the freaking time. And I am. And nobody can explain that. Nobody can tell me why I just twitch. I'm just this twitcher. I'm like a oversized chihuahua. I learned to be funny so it would look like I meant to act this way, but I act this way. This is what I do. I'm just a freak, and I'm making stuff up as I go along because I don't want you to know I don't know. I've got to tell you this goofy story that has nothing to do with anything, but you're here. And so, and I have a microphone, sucks to be you. So, the night before we came here, I'm a caterer, sort of, and my husband is a chef, and he's like Captain Details. He's like Jenny on the spot here. He's got the lists, and he's ready for things, and I sort of paint with a roller, no tape, I don't care, and just throw things at the wall. And I had this really big event for this really rich dude at a private airplane hangar, and my husband was so paranoid because he couldn't be there to help. And he kept saying, "Do you have your list? Have you checked your list? Have you put your hands on everything that's supposed to be on the list? I've got it, Dad. I've got it, Dad." And I'm rolling my eyes, and when he won't shut up, then I start calling him Mom. And I have rented this van to take all the stuff out to the airport because we really want to make a good impression on the rich guy, because we're not rich guys. We wouldn't mind a little money. And so I've hired my helper. We get out to the airport hangar. I'm so ready. I've triple checked my list, and I promptly lock the keys in the van. Now, this is in the midst of the biggest fireworks show in Texas. We are trapped at this airport hangar, and I'm behind the van, breathing in a bag, just wigging out, talking to my little helper girl, going, "What do we do? What do we do?" Well, and she's like, "You hired me." I am flipping out. I'm like, whatever happens, we're not telling Steve. We're not telling Big Daddy what I have just done. And I mean, I go through this whole process of what I'm going to lie. I got a cold and I freak out. And I was about to just hoof it out of there and leave the van with the food. I didn't have any idea, because this is how my brain works. And as a last resort, I go tell the truth, because I can come up with absolutely nothing else to do. So I go to the rich guy and I go, "Hey, everything's going so well, except that all the food is locked in the van with the key." And he just starts laughing. I think I'm going to get another job with him just so he can see what I do next. And he goes, "Stay there, I've got an idea." And I start crushing on him a little bit, not going to lie. He comes out with a hammer, and then I know I really like this guy. Because he smashes out the window, says, "I'll pay for that. How about you set up the hamburgers now?" Done. So anyway, but I digress. But that's just the way my thinking has always worked. It's lie, run, hide, breathe in a bag. That's just how I function. And so cocktails helped. I started drinking because the guy I had decided at 16 that I was going to spend the rest of my life with, because he was beautiful. And I had decided that he was going to deflower me. I didn't tell him, because guys will ruin a plan if they know what it is. I just decided I was a nice little Christian girl who thought she was going to be a minister when she grew up. But I decided if I was going to spend the rest of my life talking about sin, I should try some. He looked like a great introduction to sin. I decided that he would deflower me. And I'd seen a couple of Molly Ringwald movies. I kind of knew what I had to do to make that happen. And just as I was going to get rid of that pesky virginity, which had really been holding me back, I'm not going to lie, that's when he told me he was gay. And this will become a pattern, by the by. It's not that funny, really. And I'm so self-centered, I think he's gay at me. I literally spent the next 2 years trying to convince him he's not that gay. And he still is. I checked. But I got mad at him, and I got mad at God, and I got drunk. And my first night of drinking, I started out a closet drinker. Me and my friend Susie sat on the floor of a closet. I had a bottle of Boone's Farm Tickle Pink and a bottle of Real Sangria, and we sat on the floor and did some social drinking. And because I had 2 bottles, 2 girls, and a resentment. It's a party. And we drank, and Susie was one of those drill team girls, one of those cute little girls. Oh, she's so cute. And it's just precious. And I started out my drinking as a sport. I started out competitively drinking. Now, one of the things that you need to know about me is that I compete a lot. I do not tell people we're competing, because that would take away my edge. But Susie was just one of those cutesy girls, and she had drank before and I hadn't, and I wanted to beat her at drinking. I was so jealous of those little teeny pretty girls, those little ones who could go, I'm cold. And everybody's grabbing sweaters and changing the thermostat, and Jennifer chop wood, Susie's cold. And so I wanted to be better at drinking than Susie was, and we took our first swig, and it bounced down, and it bounced back up. It tasted like nail polish remover. I don't trust anybody who goes, and I love the taste of it and the smell of it. It was delightful. This is wine that has never seen a grape. It is awful. But it goes down, and it bounces back up, and I mush it back down because I am not going to yak before she does. Because that little Barbie thing's not going to beat me. You know, inside of me beats the heart of Barbie, but my body's made by Tonka. And I'm going to outlast those broads, but because she's falling apart. I'm built to last. But anyway, we start drinking, and I take to it right away. She drinks half a bottle, I drink a bottle and a half, because I'm a dainty flower like that. And that night I learned some things about drinking. As I said, my parents didn't drink. I knew nothing about drinking. I didn't even know that I had ever been around people who drank. I just lived in this happy little bubble full of me. And that night I learned some things about drinking. I learned that if you are 16 years old and you've just had your first bottle and a half of wine, that while you were drinking in this 2-story house, during the time you were drinking, the house has turned into a ship. And I'm not talking a cruise liner. We are talking a pirate ship on stormy seas, because I am standing flat-footed and I lose my balance. And I smash my face into the back of the closet door, and that is when the magic of alcohol began to work for me. Because I am intense and I'm sensitive, and I'm intensely sensitive, I feel changes in barometric pressure, and it's about me. I am so jealous of people who can feel one thing at a time, because I feel feeling casseroles. They just dogpile of all these feelings at once. And not only do I not have to feel my feelings, I don't have to feel my face. And sign me up. I would like a lifetime membership to this. And that night, Susie and I came out of the closet quite literally, and we laughed and we talked and we wet our pants and we puked. It was the most beautiful night of my life. This is truly the drunk I will be trying to get back to for the next 10 years, just wetting my pants with a friend. Now, I knew nothing about drinking, so the next morning I woke up and it tasted like a hamster had slept in my mouth. My tongue had grown hair. I leaned over the bathtub and drank several gallons of water. I headed downstairs. My stomach started doing that lava lamp thing. We were at a Hispanic girl's house, and her mother had made huevos rancheros, so I puked again. And then I went to go get on a bus to sing for Jesus. And I was both of those things. And I loved both of those things. And early in my drinking, there was a real conflict inside about which side I was going to go to. Because I knew I was supposed to be singing with the Jesus freaks in the choir. I knew that I was supposed to be doing the right thing even when nobody was looking. But here's the problem. By Tuesday, church starts wearing off on me and the twitch starts coming back. And alcohol is so powerful in my life that I get relief before I even drink it. All I have to do is think about my next drunk. And I get a sense of ease and comfort that comes over me at once. All I've got to do is think about alcohol, and it changes my perception about the world. And so I drank. And I have a really ridiculous drunk-a-log. It's rather lengthy because the more you laugh, the more dumb stories I want to tell you. But I always spend 50 minutes telling you the drunk-a-log and don't get to share nearly enough of the 20 years of blessed time I've gotten to share with you. So what I will tell you is that I went from that first drink where it was amazing and it felt like the world had opened up to me, and that everything that wasn't on the inside of me was filled in by this magic juice, and I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't have to worry. It was enough in a bottle And my small stuff got bigger and my big stuff got smaller, and I was just okay when I drank. I wore the world like a loose garment, as it says in the 12 and 12. And I mean, my garments got loose when I drank. And I had a good time. I love to make people laugh, but I don't laugh very often because I take myself way too seriously. And because laughing is a very uncontrolled thing. And I'm very vulnerable when I laugh. And when I drank, I could laugh. I could laugh really hard. And I loved the way that felt. I remember that there was a guy that I started dating, and he would go into blackouts. I didn't know what blackouts were, but he would go cuckoo puffs in the middle of a really fun evening, and I didn't realize what was happening. And I can remember one night he made a scene in the middle of a movie theater, and I now know he was in a blackout, and something in his brain had happened that was not happening for the rest of us. And he came over to my house in the middle of the night, and he beat on my window until that window broke, because he needed to talk to me. And if you had told me then that I would ever behave that way, that I would ever be that person making that big scene, and I would have told you you were crazy. And yet, just a few years later, I'm that girl. I'm that girl standing outside an apartment just beating on that door because he's got to let me in. Because I just have to explain why I've done what I've done. I didn't mean to, wasn't personal, and I'm at the wrong apartment. Some dude finally comes out and goes, I don't think he's answering because he don't live there. And that's what I do. If you told me that was going to happen, I would have told you there's no way. Gradually, things got worse. I went to college and I flunked out in record time. I was told that the SATs would indicate that I was going to do super-de-duper. They did not explain that I was going to have to show up for any of that. And what I showed up for was college drinking, not college. And I flunked out in record time. I met this magical guy named Humongous, and Humongous was 28. He had no job and no car. He was the perfect man. Men wander off on me, drunk or sober, and I've discovered if you date a man with no job and no car, you can drop him off somewhere, and when you come back later, he's still there. And I hooked up with Humongous and his hippie friends and went out to the commune. They were tripping on acid. I was the chaperone for their acid trips. It was awesome. I didn't understand anything these guys were about. I did not do the drugs with them because Nancy said, just say no. And I did for a little while. But what I didn't know why I was hanging out with these guys. They listened to acoustic harp music. And they planned trips to go see the sea turtles mate. And I'm kind of indoorsy. They read Nietzsche. I mean, I didn't get anything that they were about. But they were not the kind of guys who were going to say, Jennifer, we're concerned about your drinking. They are off naked in a field playing tambourines. And so I get to drink the way that I like to drink. That's why I'm hanging out with them. I get to drink like I like to drink. And I flunk out of school. I had 5 or 6 boyfriends. They may not have known they were boyfriends. It's my story. I'm going to tell it the way I want to. I've noticed that alcoholic women sort of have a different scale for what in a relationship means. I've had long-term relationships with men in Alcoholics Anonymous who have never asked me out. They said our imaginations will be fired. And so anyway, I flunk out. I make my big geographic. I put all my stuff in a truck. I'm out of here. I've got 6 hours of college credit. I'm ready to take on the world. And I drive 1 zip code away, like over a bridge in a lake, and it's a whole new world. And I start my brand new life. And it's going to be different here. Wherever I go, there I am, and I bring alcoholism with me. Before I even unpack a box, I decide I need to be a cowgirl in this town, which is precious. I go from hippie chick, which means I'm going to have to shave, to cowgirl in 24 hours. I go into this hairdresser shop, I sit down in a chair, and I go, tweezle me up some cowgirl hair. I start talking like Reba McEntire immediately. And this girl starts perming my hair. This was the 80s. Everybody was getting a perm. Bald men in this room got perms. I'm just telling you. And she was going to perm my hair. And this girl got 3 perm rods in my hair. And she goes, "Hey, you party, don't you?" I'd been hanging out with the hippies, so I knew it was my aura. She offered me a cold beer, and we got drunk and did my hair. And it is going to turn out exactly as bad as you think. She got done with the perm, and there was a shrubbery sitting on top of my head. I looked like Link from the Mod Squad. And she was feeling kind of buzzy, and that's when she grabbed the scissors. Wait for it. What I wind up with is an asymmetric haircut. I have long hair on one side and short hair on the other. And she twirls me around to look in the mirror. There's 3 heads there, and they all got bad hair. And if I am lying, I'm dying. She is standing behind me, bobbing and weaving with them scissors in her hand. And here is what she said. "Nobody in town has this haircut." And I am looking in that mirror thinking, nobody in town wants this haircut. But then she said the magic word. She said, "You know, go honky tonkin'," and I said yes. Now, I have neither honked nor have I tonked. But I ran out of that hairdresser shop, got me some hot pink ropers and a belt buckle the size of my head. And that night, Papa was twirling me. And it was magical. Now, the kind of bars I like to drink in, they have rock, parking lots, dually trucks, and guns in the gun rack. The dress code is toothless and tattooed. I had my first honky-tonk drink was at a place called the Moonlighter. And when I walked into the Moonlighter, I don't want to see more than 3 women there, and one of the women's names needs to be Meemaw. Because I am not swimming in self-esteem, and I got to know that I can walk out with the gold, the silver, or the bronze. And let me just assure you from painful experience that the bronze at the Moonlighter does not come with stock parts. I really think in AA that alcoholic women should have little patches like the Girl Scouts. And if you have gone to bed with someone and woke up and a limb was laying against the wall and you didn't notice that the night before, you get a patch. I wish I was making this stupid story up, but it's true. It was a dark day for me when they stopped putting names on the back of belts. That was so handy. Good morning, Frank. You're not going to believe this, but gradually things got worse. By day, I was a preschool teacher, which I love, except for all them damn kids. 18 4-year-olds with no volume control going, "Miss Jennifer, Miss Jennifer, Miss Jennifer, hey. Miss Jennifer is detoxing." Gradually, things got worse. I'm going to have to fast forward through this. I start getting DWIs. It's a hobby of mine, and I got one, and that's my little Girl Scout patch, and I went to go see my high-priced attorney. He worked out of his garage, and we sat down, and we talked about what was going on, and he said, "Jennifer, when they pull you over again, here's what I want you to do." And I thought, I don't need 2 patches for the same thing. Why is he saying, "when they pull you over again"? Less than 6 months later, I'm on the side of the road assuming the position, and I discover I do not just have an attorney, I have a psychic. Because he had predicted I was going to get pulled over again on a felony, on a DWI. And that's when I started discovering I had a problem. Oh, by the way, I had to quit that daycare because they were so rigid about, like, mourning. that I stopped being a preschool teacher and I became a bartender at the honky tonk. And basically, it's the same job. Because drunks and 4-year-olds are pretty much the same thing, but the refreshments are way better at the honky tonk. And but I get these 2 DWIs, and that's when I discover we've got a problem. A driving problem, and I moved next door to my favorite bar. Problem solved. I got me a home bar. This is going to solve everything. And I discover it does not solve everything, because wherever I go, there I am, and I bring alcoholism with me. And I sat on the same bar stool night after night, day after day, week after week, year after year, developing what my friend Blind Joe calls Skid Row of the soul. He says that we come into Alcoholics Anonymous with all kinds of different stories, but we all have one common denominator, and it is Skid Row of the soul. And I knew when he said that exactly what he was talking about. I knew exactly what he was talking about. I am an alcoholic woman, and I put myself in situations and circumstances that I had to be sober to get out of, and I was never sober. Never. I would turn my will and my life over to the care of anyone who would have it. And they didn't necessarily care. And some violent and shameful things began to happen to me. And for a normal drinker or a heavy drinker, my book says that would be a sufficient reason to stop or moderate. These things that began to happen to me are one of the reasons I'm absolutely convinced that I am alcoholic. Because they were not a sufficient reason for me to stop or moderate. They were a reason for me to keep on going. One of the first words I ever looked up when I got a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous was the word oblivion. And when I looked that word up, what my dictionary said was to seek to forget or to be forgotten. And from here on out, my drinking is about seeking to forget or being forgotten. It is no longer a party. I've no longer deluded myself that I'm going to find him, marry him, have babies, and get a minivan, and live happily ever after. I am just drinking for pain management. That's all I know how to do. And gradually things got worse. There were jobs and no jobs, men and no men, utilities and no utilities. I didn't lose a lot of the things that other people lost while drinking because I forgot to get them. I was engaged 7 times and never married because I'm just not a closer. Apparently, that bottomless pit of emotional need thing is a turnoff. And even in a blackout, men can remember fight or flight. But I'm grateful to the women in Alcoholics Anonymous who told the truth about themselves because I could learn the truth about myself sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I first came into AA, I like to tell you about my relationships and how he abandoned me. He abandoned me. He was running for his life. I also like to tell about how he hit me. He hit me. Now, what I didn't explain was that I had gotten off the stuff that allowed me to drink bionically. I put on 100 pounds in 20 minutes. I had 100 pounds on him. I also kind of left out the 30 seconds before he hit me, which is kind of important to the story, which is that I had awoken him gently by kicking him in the head because me and the sock puppets were up. And I call what other people call the committee, I call them the evil sock puppets because I do not want it to sound like they are working in an official capacity. But they would wake him up because we needed to talk about the relationship. And if he didn't pay enough attention, I would put my hands in his chest and twist. And I would shout at the top of my little shrill voice, "You want to hit me, don't you? You want to hit me, don't you?" And all I'm saying is if you say it long enough and loud enough, they'll take instruction. But I'm so grateful for the women who told stories about themselves just like that so that I could get honest about myself. And I was not allowed to sit in Alcoholics Anonymous a victim because victims die. I was a volunteer for absolutely everything that happened to me. And if I wasn't a volunteer for everything that happened to me, I was a volunteer to hanging on to it long after it was over. And there is a solution as long as I am the problem. And I'm grateful to those women who told the truth about themselves, because I learned how to tell the truth about myself in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I ain't sober yet. The last one went into the Navy. Actually, most of the men that I spent any significant amount of time with went into the armed services. It's another pattern we have identified, because apparently after 2 years with me, a boat full of hairy legs sounds good. This one went into the Navy, but I have sent them into the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, the Salvation Army. I mean, because I'm such a dainty flower, I want to make sure if I can't have you, nobody else is going to want you. And this one went into the Navy, and I forgot what a jerk he was, and he forgot what a jerk I was, and we fought ship to shore. It was romantical. And then the wedding kept getting postponed because he kept getting thrown in the brig. Ain't love grand? And it was God intervening. I absolutely know it was God intervening. I didn't know it was called due to alcoholism. I had no idea. But we had dueling banjos going, and we just couldn't do it. And I am so grateful today that we couldn't, because if I had had one more person to blame this on, I might still be drinking today, or I might be dead. But I reached a point where there was nobody left to blame. For me, that's my definition of a bottom. When I could no longer explain away what I was doing, how I was living, how I was dying one day at a time by pointing at anybody but me, I was never going to find any help. I moved home with my mom and dad after we called off that wedding, and I brought them alcoholism, and I was dying one day at a time in their house, and I'm so arrogant I thought they didn't know. And I was no longer singing, and I was no longer laughing, and I was that sort of gray person who came in the middle of the night and left as soon as possible because I couldn't face them, because I couldn't face myself. On November 19th of 1992, I got a felony DWI. I was living in my hometown with my parents, but I was still drinking at my home bar, which was quite a ways away. My car had autopilot, and after work, I would just go back to my home bar. And I showed up 3 days late for a birthday party I asked them to throw because I kind of got busy drinking somewhere else. And I showed up at this bar, and I started drinking, and I wasn't the worst drunk, or wasn't the worst trouble I'd ever been in. There was nothing different about that night. I was driving back to my parents' house, and a cop car got behind me, and the lights came on, and the only thing that was different was I guess I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, because I told the truth. They asked how much I'd had to drink that night, and I said $67 worth. And they said, "Get out of the car, Miss Huddleston." And I said, "Can we skip the hokey pokey and just do the pen thing? I know I'm drunk, and you know I'm drunk, and we both know I'm going to jail." And they found that super cooperative. And they took me. I knew that. I used to love sitting in meetings with those little pretty girls who would go, "And then I cried, and the cop let me go." Hooker, I cried, and I went to jail every time. But I sat in the jail cell, and I had a moment of clarity. I always recommend a jail cell. It's a pretty good place to have one. For me, it cost about the same as treatment, and I had less to unlearn. It's a joke. It's sort of a joke. But I sat in a jail cell, and for the very first time that I can remember, it was my 4th trip to jail then. I would like to tell you it was my last, but that's not true. I sat in that jail cell, and I no longer could think, what's a nice girl like me doing in a place like this? For the very first time, I saw myself for exactly what I was. And for the very first time, I knew that I belonged in that cage. I absolutely belonged in that cage. Because the only way I knew to feel halfway human was to put something in my body that made me a danger to myself and others. And I could not swear to you, God, or anybody else that I wouldn't do it again. I no longer tried to swear to you, God, or anybody else that I wouldn't do it again. I knew that I would do it again as soon as they let me out. And I knew for that moment that I had to change, or I had to get used to living in a cage, because you were not safe if I was free. And I asked God for help. And I meant it. And I sat in that jail cell and I planned to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew who you were. I knew where you were. I just didn't want what you had until I was sitting in a jail cell. And when you're sitting in jail, meetings don't seem that bad. And I made a vow that I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I meant it right up until they let me out. And I got this brain that's out to kill me, and this brain that's out to kill me goes, now wait a minute. There's no reason to overreact to this whole felony deal. I knew a guy who had 8 DWIs, and he was drinking at my home bar. Here is a man with a real answer. I got to go talk to Jimmy, my legal advisor, because clearly Jimmy's got a solution that does not include not drinking. Because I had thought a little bit about that not drinking, and that seemed uncomfortable. And Jimmy's solution had to be better than that. So after I talked to my attorney, who had no good news for me, I went to the bar to go talk to Jimmy to find out how he was not in prison. Sometimes people get confused and think Jimmy was an attorney. No. The great legal minds of our time are criminals. And so I went to go talk to my criminal friend, Jimmy, and I walked into the bar. They did what they always did when I walked into my home bar. They put my first 3 drinks on the bar, because that's how I order. I order in 3s. I don't have time to wait. And I need my medicine. And they put those 3 drinks on the bar, and I said, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm in a lot of trouble. I got to talk to Jimmy. I'll be back. But I just got to talk to Jimmy. And I sit down across from this man who I thought was a way worse drunk than me. He had a son that was a toddler in intensive care, and Jimmy was getting drunk at the bar. And I'm not judging his character. I absolutely, totally, and completely understand his character. He's a guy just like me. And I truly believe that Jimmy was doing the very best that he could with what he had. But I'm sitting across from this guy, and I start telling him about the trouble I'm in. And he said, Jen, honey, I can afford to be the kind of drunk I am. You can't afford to be the kind of drunk you are. And I was appalled. How dare he? I got 3, he got 8. How's he judging me? What I learned was that Jimmy was talking about money. He'd been paying his attorney in cocaine. And I didn't happen to have any cocaine. And he said, all he's doing is postponing it. I'm going to prison. I'm going for a real long time. But you can't afford to be the kind of drunk you are, Jen. You gotta do something. The other thing that happened that night was that at some point there was a drink in front of me, and I drank it, because that's what I do. And I had had more than 1 drink before I realized I had drank. I don't know if I ordered it, if somebody else did, if I drank somebody else's. I have no recollection. I always thought these turning point moments would be like on TV, where the alcoholic is sitting and the drink is there and the violins are, and it's a decision. It's not what happened to me. I was drinking before I knew I was drinking. And then I was already drunk. And I didn't even know that I had decided to drink, because it is as automatic as breathing in and out for me. But that's the moment when I knew I would never be able to get or stay sober by myself, that I would drink whether I wanted to or not, because that is my automatic reaction to life, is I will drink. And there is nowhere you can put me where I can't find it. Trust me, I can find it. And so that's when I began to drive around an AA group. Do we have any orbiters here? I spent the next 10 days from sunup to sundown going around and around and around, through the parking lot, around. Made it inside one time to get a meeting schedule for a friend, and ran back out. I did not need a meeting schedule for a friend. I knew your meeting schedule because I saw when the people with the styrofoam cups went in, and I saw when the people with the styrofoam cups went out. I knew exactly when your meetings were. I just couldn't quite get in. I was absolutely suicidal. I did not have a meeting, and I did not have a solution, and I did not have a drink. I'm living at my parents' house. Every attorney in Dallas is sending me mail, which is sort of a dead giveaway that something's going on with Jennifer. But we're really good at don't ask, don't tell in my family. My daddy comes with this stack of letters from attorneys, and he said, "Do I want to know about this?" "No, sir." "All right." And I would sit in a nearby parking lot, and I would practice saying, "My name is Jennifer, and I'm an alcoholic." No. I would just cry, because I knew alcoholics really shouldn't drink. And I could not fathom my life without drinking. You don't understand. You just don't understand. I'm like a raw egg, and if you take that shell off, the only thing that holds me together, I will not survive. I truly believed that. I sat in that parking lot practicing saying, "My name is Jennifer and I'm an alcoholic," because I was only going to say it once, and by God, you better believe me. I've said it more than once. And I kept waiting for the people with the blue books to come, like the missionaries, and find me. But that's not my story. My story is that on December 4th of 1992, I walked into my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous that I wanted to be at. I had been trying for 10 days to get in the door, and on that day I reached what the book calls the jumping off place, where I can no longer imagine life with or without alcohol. I have gone 10 days without a drink, but I know I won't make it 10 more, because I'm thinking about dying more than I'm thinking about living, because I cannot stand the way that I feel when there's no alcohol in my body. I don't know what to do. I'm not gonna make it. And I walked into a meeting of the Plano group of Alcoholics Anonymous. And all I could think is, it's all over. It is all over. But my God recycles, because today that's my prayer. That the life I left behind on December 4th of 1992 is completely over. And that I have been given a new life through Alcoholics Anonymous. And that I don't ever have to go back to the trailer park again. I don't ever have to live that way again. I truly believe that. Now, it's important for me to tell you a little bit about my first home group. I went to it because I could walk to it, because I knew they were going to take my driver's license pretty quick. And it was the quintessential home group. It was the quintessential AA group. It's the place where furniture goes to die. When grandma says get rid of the couch, they take it to the Plano group, and that furniture has every form of DNA on it known to man. The walls are brown, and it's got those cool pictures that people have donated, the pictures they torture the newcomer with. My favorite was the 3 frogs. There's 3 frogs sitting on 3 lily pads, and some guy with 4 teeth is going to take you over to that picture and say, "Newbie, which one of them frogs has made a decision? Don't answer yet. Think about it." And I would sit in that meeting staring at the frogs. I guess y'all must have the frog thing too. Because most places, there's people looking like Cocker Spaniels when I tell that. The frog that's made a decision is the one that jumps. You don't know. But they don't tell you that. They make you look at the stupid thing for 6 weeks. It's the second frog. I know it's the second frog. No, I don't think it's the second frog. The Plano group was long and skinny, and everybody sat at one end, and guess where I sat? Right by the door. Because I don't know when the voices are going to say, "Deuces," but I got to be close. And what happened to me was, it was a late night meeting on a Friday night, December 4th of 92, and the people who were down at this end of the room said, "Hey, come down here, come sit with us." And I didn't remember that for a really long time. But what happened to me, what has continued to happen to me, is what happened to me before we even started the meeting. Alcoholics Anonymous invited me to become a part of this circle. And if you are new, please know we may fall down on that, but I promise you, every time we say circle up, we mean you. Come be a part of this circle. Come be a part of what we are. Come do what we do. They invited me to be a part of the circle, and you did it again this weekend. I have been invited to be a part of recovery. And my sponsor told me, I called and complained because the cool girls would go to Starbucks and I wasn't invited. There's cliques in AA. Ah! And she said, did you ask if you could be part of the clique? Why would I do that? Ask. Ask. You can be a part of the clique. We're not that cool, seriously. I mean, some of us are that cool, but not all of us. And so anyway, I sit down in that meeting, and I also need to tell you what I looked like when I came into that meeting. Because they told me when I came in that there would be people who couldn't hear the story that I was going to tell, but they could see that something might be different. And let me explain to you what I looked like when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Some of y'all are older, you'll know what I'm talking about. I look like Pat from Saturday Night Live. I wish I was exaggerating. I had some androgynous sweats that had become my uniform. I wore a ball cap. I had short hair. I wore no makeup. I had boys' shoes. They did not know what it was, but it wept a lot. In all fairness to them, my big secret on my first four-step was that I thought I was a lesbian that didn't like women. I was a little confused. And that's the lovely lady that walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. And I sat down in that chair, and they turned out the lights and they lit the candles, and I knew I was in a cult. But I had absolutely nowhere else to go. I had nowhere else to go. And I sat through that meeting, and I had bought a big book at Half Price Books the day before because I wasn't going to invest the full $5. I have joined Weight Watchers many times. Do I look like a lifetime member? I was not optimistic about Alcoholics Anonymous. But I figured kind of like Weight Watchers. It probably wouldn't work, but it probably wouldn't hurt me. And so I bought a big book because I didn't want to look dumb, and I read it my first meeting. And I sat in that meeting and I listened to you share, and there were people who were so excited that I was there. I mean, I hope every newcomer feels the way that I felt when I walked into my first meeting, because it felt like they were like, she's here, we can start. I had brought the topic. I did not know that, but and they said such sweet things to me. They would say, you're the most important person here. And I thought that was delightful. Now they would follow up with, because you remind us of where we never want to be again. Which I thought was a little rude. But they start sharing so enthusiastic from the book Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have no idea what these people are talking about. I have no idea. We get so excited talking at people that we forget they don't know what we're saying. And about halfway through the meeting, I felt this desperation come over me because I didn't hear anything that was going to keep me sober that day. I didn't hear anything that I could hang on to. And I had promised God I would stay for the whole meeting, but that was all I could promise him, that I would stay for one whole meeting. And in the middle of the meeting, one of my greatest teachers in Alcoholics Anonymous, a guy named Gene, he looked like one of the Duck Dynasty guys. He had a beard down to here and a camo fishing cap, and Gene was not a member of the Mensa. But Gene knew exactly how to talk to a newcomer where a newcomer could understand. What Gene said was, I didn't know I was an alcoholic. Hell, I just thought I was thirsty. And I am bawling uncontrollably, and I'm like, me too, Gene. And he said, my problem is the more I drank, the thirstier I got. Shazam! Dude, the more I drank, the thirstier I got. And Gene said it started with the first drink. I had been running an experiment ever since I got me a home bar, watching these guys. There are guys who go into bars with watches. And they do what the watch tells them to do. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. They'll have one drink, maybe two, a kamikaze on their birthday. But they'll look at the watch and the watch will say, hey, it's time to go home. And then they will do the craziest thing. They'll go, hey, look at the time. I've got to go. Mama's got dinner waiting on me. And they would actually get up and leave. And I would think, why would you do that? We have pretzels here. Why would you do that? Some other mook would look at his watch and he would say, look at the time. The game's about to start. I've got to go. And that's when I would turn into the flight attendant. We have TVs here, here, and here. Why would you do that? But my question changed from why would you do that to how do you do that? Because I could not do that. And Gene, in a very succinct way, explained why. The more I drink, the thirstier I get. And it starts with the very first drink. And he went on to say that he found a spiritual advisor in Alcoholics Anonymous who taught him how to take 12 steps. Through taking 12 steps, he found a God on the inside of him. Actually, he said a higher power whom I choose to call God, which is one of my things. Every now and then I get sort of prissy with that. I call him God because he calls me Jennifer. But I have learned that it don't matter. You can call him what you want to. I met a girl who called him Sprinkles, and it worked just fine for her. But anyway, and he said since he developed a relationship with that higher power that he found on the inside, that he hadn't had to take that first drink and he hadn't been thirsty in a real long time. And I knew I belonged in Alcoholics Anonymous after that one man shared. One man sharing his truth in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's all it takes. Anytime a meeting gets off track, it takes one man or one woman. Where are the paddles? Get the ball back in the game, y'all. Know the book. Have the experience, and you can get the ball back in the game because the newcomer's listening for the ding, 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 ding. And every now and then there's somebody flipping it out. And we got to flip it back in. And Gene flipped the ball back in the game by explaining alcoholism to a brand new newbie. And I knew he knew something about me that nobody else knew. That I cannot pick up a drink without getting thirstier. And once I get thirstier, all bets are off. And after the meeting, they asked if I'd like to share, which was a terrible mistake because I have not shut up since. And I listened to you guys, and I thought Alcoholics Anonymous was whatever you did. And I think it's really important for us to remember that newcomers think AA is whatever we do. And in that meeting, there were a lot of ANDAs, and I didn't know anything about the traditions. Hello, it's my first meeting. But everybody was an ANDA, and so I thought you had to be an ANDA. And I quit doing dope as soon as the DEA showed up. Done. Clean. No sponsor, no 12-step program. Done. But I couldn't stop drinking that way. And so when they asked me if I'd like to share, I said, my name's Jennifer, and I'm an alcoholic and a thief, a whore, and a liar. I did not know that when you said alcoholic, the rest of it was kind of covered. But I went on to describe how I'd been dying one day at a time and some of the things that I was really ashamed of. And I said the thing that I'm most ashamed of is that I have no idea how to do this, and I will not be able to get or stay sober by myself. There is no way. And those tacky people smiled and nodded. You see, I didn't know it then, but I know it now. You can fool the fans in AA, but you can't fool the players. And that day I was a player in Alcoholics Anonymous because I was just desperate enough to do whatever they told me to do. Just for a small window of time, I did what they told me to do. And I got my hugs and my newcomer packet. And I used to say, and then they asked me to go to Denny's. I now know they told me to go to Denny's. Do not ask a newbie to do anything. We're really busy. I had absolutely nothing to do, but I didn't know what you were going to do to me. So I didn't agree to anything unless you told me exactly what was going to happen. But they told me to go to Denny's. And I know they told me to go to Denny's because I went. And on the way, I went thinking that that's where you filled out the paperwork to join Alcoholics Anonymous. That was like AA orientation, and in a way, it is. What I learned at Denny's was something you can't learn in meetings. What I learned is that you people laugh at things that are not funny. You have no volume control, and I don't know why they call it anonymous, because you say things like, isn't that just like an alcoholic? And I am underneath my menu, twitching like crazy, waiting on my moons over my hammy, singing Jesus Loves Me, because everybody's looking at me. I was the almost homecoming queen in that town in 1985. And all of a sudden, these people at this table are shouting about alcoholics. But what I discovered was something I would read about later in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. There exists among us a fellowship and a friendliness that is indescribably wonderful. And I found that at Denny's. I couldn't carry on a conversation, but y'all were having fun not drinking and telling the truth about yourself. You thought you were hilarious. And you set the hook the next day. The next day I walked into a meeting, and my friend Tennessee Danny, who is no longer sober, walked up to me and he said, "Hey, your name's Jennifer, right?" And I said, "Why, what have you heard?" And he said, "No, you're Jennifer, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did you drink today?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Welcome to your second day of sobriety." And I fell in love with Alcoholics Anonymous right then. And the big deal was not that he knew it was my second day of sobriety. The big deal was he knew my name. And I kept coming back because I fell in love with you. Before I had a God of my own understanding, before I had 12 steps, before I had a sponsor, I had you and your stories. And you fed me, God, with your stories. You were better than anything on TV, better than anything. You were my soap opera. I came back to meetings because I needed to know what the hell was going on. I got to find out if Frank's got a job. I got to find out if Chris and Richard are breaking up. I need to know. And I come in and there's, seriously, my first year, I watched 2 people die drunk and 2 people die sober, and I went to the first 4 funerals I've ever been to. And I got to see the difference. I got to see the tragedy. These families that are ripped apart by alcoholism because their kids, their husbands, their spouses, they could not stay sober. And I got to see the celebration of those folks who died sober. They were the ones who were wheeling the oxygen cart in to the meetings that are filled with smoke. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Old dudes with, and they were coming into the, I always thought they were going to blow up in the meeting. And I would look at these guys honestly, and I would say, why? Why are you coming to AA meetings? Surely stage 4 cancer, you get to drink. Seriously, you're not getting out of this alive. And I meant it. I mean, I'm looking for the loophole. And these people, I'm so grateful that I was ballsy enough to ask them, because they said they found the best life they've ever had in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, that they wanted to spend as much time telling you thank you as they possibly could before they went to the big meeting. And I caught it. I got a sponsor because you badgered me into it. Get a sponsor. Come to the women's meeting. Oh, are you kidding me? Little packs and herds of women, going to lunch, going to dinner, gift bags. And I caught what you had in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. What happened to me is the text of Alcoholics Anonymous. My first sponsor didn't know anything about working the steps out of the big book, but she gave me enough to do so that I could stay. And when I reached a step she had not worked, thank God she told me the truth and didn't make anything up. And I found one of them, the bulldog. She had a big book strapped to her leg. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it felt like she had a big book strapped to her leg. And she read the book to me, and when we came to a step, we did it. My favorite drunk trap is in the 3rd step prayer. We got to the 3rd step prayer. She put 3 pillows down, one for me, one for God, one for her. I really wanted her to shut the many blinds in the door because anybody could walk past seeing us holding hands, and I was afraid they'd think I was a Jesus freak, and wouldn't that affect my reputation? And I got on my knees with this lady who was teaching me the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I held her hands and I said a prayer. And in the middle of that prayer that I had no that had no significance to me whatsoever. I began to weep, and I don't know why, except something was different because I was doing something to prove to God that I wanted to stay sober more than anything. And then she read the next line. We thought well before taking this step. And I said, wait a minute. We did not think well. And she laughed hysterically and said, too late, you already did it. What happened to me is the text of Alcoholics Anonymous, read to me by another sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous, who shared her experience, strength, and hope, who cared more about saving my life than hurting my feelings. What happened to me was the desperation of someone who fell in love with you and wants to stay but doesn't know if she can. What happened to me is doing more than I possibly thought I could so that I could stay. I was trying to earn something that I already had, but I didn't know that. I did a lot better in AA before they told me that they couldn't kick me out. And I did most of the things that I did for more than 10 years of my sobriety simply because of what will they think if I don't. And I don't really care what your motives are, I got to stay. There came a time when I could not stay for those reasons. There came a time at 14 years of sobriety where I had a bottle of narcotics that someone had left at my apartment, and I decided that I could either take them one at a time or all at once because the pain of being me, trying to do it myself, was not going to work. And that's when I developed a relationship with God that is as real as you and me. You see, I'd had this little Swiss Army knife of bad behaviors that I didn't want to tell you about. And I had all kinds of different things that I could use temporarily to postpone the pain. But I hit 14 years and I could no longer postpone the pain anymore. And it had to be me and God or I was going to die. And I knew that beyond a shadow of a doubt. And I leaned into that pain. And I would call my sponsor and I would say, I'm dying here. And she would say, no, you're not. You're growing. And she would say, one way or the other, you're going to be okay. And I would say, I want it one way and not the other. And she said, that's your problem. And there came a time when I just had to surrender it all. And I said, God, please remove everything that stands in between me and you. And he took it. I didn't think he'd do it that way. But I wound up losing my home, my car, everything. I lived in one room of an Al-Anon's house. And I fully surrendered. And every good thing that's happened to me, I can trace back to that one way or another. I don't want it this way. That surrender at a gut level, I became a maid. And I would clean people's houses and look at their bookshelves, and I'd go, I'd love that. I read that book. I took that class. And then this little voice in my brain would go, they don't care, they want a clean toilet. And I would clean toilets. And I moved into a house after the Al-Anon kicked me out, which she did, because she's working a program, honestly. I moved into a little rental house with people who wanted to stay sober, and I had 14 years of sobriety, and it was the first time in my life AA delivered to my home. And people would come to my house, and they would sit in my garage, and they would smoke cigarettes, and they would cry because they wanted to get better. And there was a sign on my garage door. It's still there today, and it says, what happens in the garage stays in the garage. And we sat out there, and we smoked, and we talked about Alcoholics Anonymous over and over and over again. And during that time, this man that I'd known in high school who used to stare at me like this, sent me an email. And he wanted to take me on a date. He was living in Colorado, and he came and he took me on this date. And let me tell you the kind of guys I date. They live with their moms, they do not have jobs, and they probably don't have a car. But I'm willing to put the bicycle in the back of mine. And this man's going to fly from Colorado. He's a chef. He's going to fly from Colorado. He's going to take me to dinner. He takes me not to Taco Bell where we're going to go Dutch. He takes me to a real restaurant where the chef comes to the table. And he takes me on this date, like real. And 3 days later, I invited all my AA friends over to the house. And I said, if you find any weird on him, I'm serious, you tell me. Because I don't trust me anymore. I introduced him to one of my best friends, and he said, oh, he's precious. And I said, how do you know he doesn't even talk? And he said, because he looks at you like we look at you. So I married him. I married him, and we decided that God would decide if we were going to have a baby. And for 8 weeks, I was going to have a baby. And then I wasn't. And for 3 days, I was as sad as I have ever been. My heart broke in ways I didn't think it was possible for it to break. And on the third day, I woke up and I said, what's next? And I thought there was something wrong with me, that I was okay after 3 days of just crying and crying and crying. But you see, God had put everything in my path that I needed to prepare for the thing I didn't know was going to happen. As a matter of fact, I showed up at my OBGYN, whatever that's called, and I said, I miscarried this weekend. And she said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. And she said, are you normally this well adjusted? And I said, I can get you 500 people on the phone in half an hour that will assure you I'm not. But I have a God that's bigger than what I think I want or need. I have a solution that's bigger than what I think I want or need. And I was just okay. I was just okay. As a matter of fact, it was a year later, and I was standing at a conference, and we were playing a game, and somebody was whispering in my ear a message from God, and I was mortified because it was Mother's Day weekend, and I did not want to be there because I knew I'd been tricked. It was a room full of women. God was going to do something here. And this lady whispered in my ear, and she said, and you're a great mother. And I got so angry that the tears just shot out of my eyes, because she had no idea that a year to the day I had miscarried. And I thought, I am not a mother. Why would you do that? Why would you open this back up? And the next thought was, who are you to say you're not a mother? You did exactly what I needed you to do. You carried that baby exactly as long as I needed you to carry it. And you gave the baby to me. That was your job. So if you're new or you're feeling like you're new, you don't ever have to drink again. I swear it. You do not ever, ever have to drink again. More importantly, you don't have to figure it out on your own. It's so simple, it's monkey see, monkey do. Just grab the tail in front of you and let somebody grab your tail and let's swing along. I am so grateful for a program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm so grateful for a life that works. I am so grateful for a fellowship that I can be a part of. I'm so grateful that you have taught me how to be all the things I'm ever going to need to be, and I get to mess up and I get to clean it up. You taught me how to be wrong. It is delightful. Be wrong like 9 times a day. It's so freeing. You taught me how to be the kind of person I always thought I wanted to be. And recently, my dad's got Alzheimer's. He's blind and he's overweight. My mother went into the hospital because she has cirrhosis, although she's never drank. God's little practical joke. And I'm taking care of my dad, and he has no internal clock, and he's got to dress and shave at 3 in the morning. Whip around, and I'm like, Dad, it's 3 in the morning, and you're getting dressed. We're not going anywhere. And he goes, if it was 3 in the morning, you'd be asleep. And I turn around, because I'm real spiritual at 3 in the morning, and I say, you are going to go back to bed. And he goes, oh, really? You're just going to run my life? And I realize we have completely reversed roles. But because of Alcoholics Anonymous and fellowship with people like you, you taught me how to respond in love, even when I don't know what's going on, even when I have no idea what to do next. You tell me love is the right thing, because God loved me before I knew the right thing. And you loved me before I knew the right thing. And I get to love them no matter what, as they are, where they are. And that is the gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. Please come join us. Please do what we do. Please get in the middle of the circle. This is an experience you cannot miss. You don't want to miss it. It's amazing. And there is a God who loves you more than anything. And there's nothing you can do about it. I'm glad to be here. It's a good day to be sober.